Caput aprite vero, redens lares Domino. Caput aprite vero, redens lares Domino.
Greetings. Welcome to a Meatsmith Harvest podcast. This is the podcast that I am recording in the midst of Lent, wherein we recall that essential principle of human nature and, I would say, of agriculture, that quia pulvis est, you are dust, we are dust, and to dust we shall return. When you think about it, that's really what agriculture, what farming is. It all comes back to the soil. It is the management of dust and the rather divine, in imitation of our Creator, the divine act of imbuing and ordering that dust with life. That's really something that I think about every day when I nurture the dust of my fields by rotating, grazing animals. It's really incredible, and the difference is astounding between a field, two fields, one which is managed and one which lacks management. And unfortunately, the standard approach is the field without management. So here in Oklahoma, along with oil, we produce beef. So there are lots and lots of acres dedicated to the lowing herds of bovines that wander about and nibble the grass until they're taken to the feedlot. And they do this usually without management. And what does management consist of when it comes to vivifying the dust of the field, of the cross timber prairie? For bovines, it means cutting up large segments of land into smaller paddocks bordered by hot wire, or, as is becoming the case, and I'm sure will become more common, GPS collars. You basically create smaller paddocks and you put animals on those paddocks, specifically of the grazing ruminant variety, sheep, goats, cows, in small paddocks. And in the smaller paddock, they graze voraciously, for they can see the limits of their own boundaries. And they also graze less discriminately. They can't just wander off and eat dessert all day, as Joel Salatin would say, because they do not have the foresight that you do, the benevolent husbandmen of your land. They do not know that you should not just eat whatever you want all the time. For if you do that, in a few years, that particular crop will be gone. And that's what sheep will do specifically, even more so than cows. They'll go eat their ice cream wherever they can find it. And then they'll walk around. And then a few hours later, they will go, or a few days, they'll go straight back to the ice cream. And they will eat it again before it has time to regrow, to restore itself. And so what management of grass looks like, and this works on the small homestead, is preventing them their return to the ice cream. You fence them off from it so that the ice cream can recover. And that way, they ensure the continued of their favorite crops into the future. You just have to give it time to recover, to put out some blade. And if they nibble it too close to the earth, which they will inevitably do, then it won't recover, or at least not quick enough. And within a few seasons, that particular flavor of ice cream will forever vanish from your pasture, and slowly, species by species, your pasture grasses will revert to woody and so-called invasive crops because you have deprived that dust, that earth, of a diversity of species which it needs to grow and produce the maximum amount of edible cellulose for your ruminants. And so invasives come in to fill the gap, to supply some lacking nutrient in the soil that was otherwise supplied by a particular species. And so even on a very tiny scale, I have always been diligent to move my creatures. And by tiny scale, I mean like a cow and a calf. At most, I think on my little 7 acres of fenced in pasture, we had 3 bovines, 3 cows, and about 10 sheep. But even in a much smaller crowd than that, you can still cut up the pasture, in my case with hot wire, and move them with frequency, depending upon the season. And the difference is astounding. I can tell a managed field in my area from an unmanaged field immediately. It's so clear, especially when you look at an unmanaged field, one that is not what they call rotationally grazed or cut up into smaller paddocks in which animals are moved at regular and frequent intervals, allowing for recovery of the grass. When you look down close, look at that pasture. And from a distance, it might look green, especially in the spring. Everything's going to look green here, like atomic green. It's a little crazy. We call it green country because the green is positively vivid. It's like pulsing, radiating green. It's really astounding in this part of the world. From a distance, it looks incredible, but when you get up close, it looks like the top of my balding pate. It looks like the top of my head. You can see a lot of soil. You can see a lot of bare dust. And that is a scourge. That is the death of a pasture. Bare earth. Nature abhors a vacuum of bare earth. And so it will try to fill it with things that are maybe less delicious and nutritious for your livestock when they have eradicated their ice cream. And not only that, when you look at the bare earth, you see there's like even small, short plants, broadleafs with woody stems that are pretty much useless to cows. And pretty soon, your pasture over successive seasons of unmanaged grazing reverts to understory, to bushes and to forest. All variously inedible, especially when compared with succulent green blades of grass. Management. I think this management is not an arbitrary imposition of a human structure from the outside. It is actually natural to the field itself. It's not a coercion, an unnatural imposition of civilization, whereby humans impose their unnatural and abstract ideas upon the earth. No, I think it's actually natural. One of my favorite natural landscapes is the beautiful divided pastures of Europe. When you look at, especially like the south of England and Devon, which is one of the few places I've actually been, so I can verify that it is there. I would argue that you see a natural landscape, even though you don't see a single plant from a primitive pre-human forest. People have been there so long and managing it for so long and so artfully, so rationally, that there's not a single square foot of that place that is not marked by human husbandry. There's no wilderness. Doesn't happen. We still have some of that here, but even then, our forests have been burned for many generations, and mostly instigated by humans. But it's not as managed. So here you can still kind of walk out and go into untended land, an unweeded garden that goes to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely, as Hamlet might say. Whereas in the English countryside, or really anywhere in Europe outside of the main cities, they have been tended for so long that it is a checkerboard. It is a geometric juxtaposed succession of pastures receding all the way to the horizon, all divided by dry stack stone walls. It's incredibly beautiful and incredibly inhabited. I added a syllable. It's inhabited. And I would say natural. It is natural. Culture is natural. Because the thing that produces that kind of order and that kind of management on a landscape is a natural thing. In fact, it is in a way, the preeminent part of nature. It is the rational soul of the farmer. And when he acts upon the land with his reason, he is not defiling it or degrading it from its primitive liberty, from its primitive beauty. He is fulfilling it. He is bringing it artfully to a even closer and nearer and more proximate fulfillment of its true nature, which for a while has been unkept and unfulfilled by not being artfully husbanded. One of the most beautiful examples of this is a flock of sheep. They're so ordered, and I resolutely reject the idea that sheep are dumb. They are only dumb in the sense that they are silent. They open not their mouths before the shearers. But other than that, they are not stupid. They evince their nature with such perfect and exceptional clarity that we can, if we're docile to their nature, manage them beautifully and effortlessly. It's really a lovely thing. Sheep are not dumb; they are smart. Most of the cause of our derisive view of the intelligence of sheep is a result of encountering their greatest strength, the greatest natural strength that makes them manageable, and that is their herd instinct. Sheep are incredible. If you've ever worked with them, you know this. You know that with sheep, they do not necessarily fear death in the same way that we do. The thing that they fear is separation. For a sheep, separation equals death. And this is actually very wise. This is wise on their part. Because you will experience this when you go to herd sheep and you're trying to say get them in a small containment or move them from point A to point B. And if you develop frustration in this act, which is very common, you must look for the cause of your consternation in your own mismanagement, not the sheep, because they're always going to do one thing. Always, always. That is maintain the herd, maintain the integrity of the flock. And they are so tenacious in this. They are so avid to be with the flock that they will actually tolerate coming right next to you, the supposedly dangerous predator that implies impending death to them. They will come right next to you in order to regain the flock, in order to get back to the flock. They will actually close proximity to the wolf if it means getting back to the flock. And this is a totally intentional judgment on their part. This isn't imbecility, because the flock is their safety. It is the source of the tranquility of order for them. And indeed, it is their greatest defense. Evolutionists describe it in this way: that flock is a camouflage, which is an interesting thing. I think all evolutionary explanations, among other things, are too focused on the economy of predation and prey. So they miss a lot of stuff. But doesn't mean that none of it applies. And one of them is that the herd is camouflage for the individual, because predators will go after an individual, not necessarily because he looks the most juicy and delicious. That would be a human thing to do, not a felid thing to do, not a lion thing. And not necessarily because they are the easiest to catch. They're going to go after the one that they can distinguish. Step one to getting your quarry, to getting your animal prey, is to pick one. You gotta select one. And when there is a whole group and they all look exactly the same, you end up chasing 35 creatures, but you can only take one. And so it doesn't work. And so one death sentence for any part of a herd is individual distinction. I almost said individuality, but I changed mid-word. Individual distinction, a distinctive mark, that means death to an animal that is preyed upon, because that's who will be targeted by the predators. I didn't actually mean to talk about any of that. What I wanted to do was mention the lamb class. I've just published, even though it is not a book, a lamb in a day class. And this one is for May 30th. Yes, and it's actually starting to fill rather quickly. So if you would like to see how to cooperate with this admirable, and I would say relatively, maybe completely, maybe absolutely, flawless nature of sheep, come to this class, because there is this amazing paradox, right? And I think you can highlight it when you think about the conservation groups, the nonprofit conservations in places like the African continent, versus the poachers. And I'm not in favor of poaching. I don't even really know what that means, to be truly frank. And I know it's extractive and species go extinct and they waste an elephant for its ivory. I know all that stuff. But I think there's more going on there. But the paradox is that I think poachers know more about the creatures than the conservationists. The way to get real knowledge of an animal is to desire it for its true end, for how it can serve you. And I would argue, oddly, even if it is illegal, poachers have a closer lock on that than conservationists, who simply want the animal to endure in its natural habitat. But here's the thing, the natural habitat of all creatures is to feed man. That is its natural end. And insofar as we estrange them from this, their final cause, we don't understand them. And you learn so much more about herding sheep, raising sheep, grazing them when you harvest one, when you consummate its nature by taking its life to feed your family. It's the most intimate education you can possibly get. And perhaps paradoxically, when you go to slaughter that lamb, the most intimate way, the most intimate means of taking the life, meaning requiring you to handle it up close and personal, is also the best way to take the life, the most tranquil and peaceful way. When you harvest animals on a home scale, on a domestic scale, not buffered and mediated by steel and concrete and chutes and machines, but with your own hands and a duly sharpened knife, you get experimental knowledge. The kind of knowledge that God intended for Adam to have when he marshaled all of the creatures before him and bid him to name them. And he named them in accordance with their nature. It is necessary for us to know their nature. That was part of Eden, of dominion. Even though Adam did not need them for clothing, for transportation, or even for food. Nonetheless, it was part of his stewardship, his dominion as the head of creation, to name them so that he could know them, according to St. Thomas. And that's what you do when you bring an animal to its noble end of feeding your family, because you're limited by it's not primitive tech, minimalist, simple, beautiful tech, specifically a sharp knife. That's really all you need. Maybe a gambrel to hang them. You are forced to be very intimate with them when you make the kill, especially. And in order for that to even be efficient at all, and not to be an extraordinary waste of both the animal's health and your energies, you have to do it in a way that regards the nature of the animal. You have to understand it. You have to have experimental knowledge of it, the kind that we're supposed to have, even in Eden when we needed them much less or not at all. And for a lamb, that means you are going to prevent flight at all cost, because lambs will follow their mentality will follow what their body does. And if they find themselves fleeing, they will be panicked, anxious, and fearful. Whereas if you can artfully but decisively restrain flight by petting them and by handling them properly, then they will be tranquil. So tranquil, in fact, that you will find yourself taking their life, but in such a way that you kind of meet in the middle of the equation. Insofar as you are taking the life, the lamb is surrendering to it. They're not actually even struggling against you. They become a very beautiful analogy, an obvious, visible from space analogy of surrendering one's life, of giving it as a gift. But it's on you. It's on you, the rational animal, to know the creature well enough to take its life in that way, to guarantee that tranquility and peace. Not so much extracting value from the creature as you are cooperating with it in the fulfillment of its nature and yours. So we're going to do that. We're going to do a lamb harvest. And that is going to be on May 30th of this year, and that class is actually filling rather quickly. These one-day classes are great because you can leave the farm for a day. That's doable. You can milk in the morning, come to the class, learn how to harvest your own sheep in perpetuity and no longer be dependent upon some other slaughterman, and then go home and milk in the evening. Get your evening milking done. So I think it's a great opportunity to learn this, and not just to learn how to extract protein from your living creatures, but to do it really well. And I know I say this a lot, but we do it really well. And in these classes, you learn how to do a dang good job, and such that you can only increase and be inspired by the art of your own harvesting, which will really enhance the way that you eat. So that's coming up. Check out the lamb class, May 30th, farmsteadmeatsmith.com, if you would like to sign up for that. Spaces are filling. I think there might be 3 or 4 left in that class. And I keep it limited to 8 people. We'll do several lambs so that there's lots of repetition in the day, but we are going to fit in the slaughter in the morning, the AM. That involves the kill, the skinning, the evisceration. We'll cook up some offal for lunch probably. We'll probably start some shanks braising. And then the second half of the day, we're going to do the cutting. We will cut up carcasses and cure them. And it'll be really delicious. It'll be really good. So do check that out. All right, I'm going to try to invite our members, because another thing, an avenue for learning how to harvest animals is the Meatsmith membership. If you can't make it all the way to a class, then you could sign up for the Meatsmith membership. And this is an online community that I created so many years ago. It's actually kind of funny. I think I started it. And it's an online membership in the craft and art of harvesting and raising, cutting, cooking, and curing animals on the domestic scale. So not in the totally inapplicable context of an industrial scale. That's one of the problems, is that any information you might look up, especially for slaughter, butchery, and curing, on how to do those things for yourself, is all of that information comes from the industrial scale, where they're doing literally 30,000 pigs a day. Totally non-applicable to your backyard and your dining room table. It's not just a shift in emphasis. It's a different process altogether. Not even applicable. I get people in our classes, not so frequently anymore, but used to happen. We get a few that would come and be like, I just wanted to see where my food comes from. And I have to tell them, actually, unfortunately, this is not where your food comes from at all. It comes from a completely different place, such that if you were to see it, you would be disinclined to consume it. It is very conveniently kept out of our consciousness, necessarily, because it is unappetizing preeminently. Whereas doing it on the small scale, that is simple and so forgiving. And I would say truly flavorful. It makes it easy. It makes it just the difference in scale. Just the fact that you are going to do 3, 4, even 10, let's say 20 sheep in a day, as opposed to tens of thousands. That makes your yield effortlessly delicious. You're starting with fresh meat, not meat that has been transported centrally slaughtered, maybe transported overseas, and cut up there, packaged, brought back to you, distributed again through a myriad of grocery store outlets, wrapped in plastic and handled by a bajillion people before it ever reaches your kitchen. That meat is inherently far dirtier. It's far dirtier than your meat, even if you drop your lamb carcass in the dirt. I'm going to say unequivocally, with absolute confidence, that if you skin your lamb and accidentally drop it, the carcass, and it falls in the dirt, that lamb is orders of magnitude cleaner and safer to consume than the meat that is available every day in the grocery store. It's not even close. It's not even close. Such is the nature of central distribution. So come to the lamb class. And I would say that the main thing that will surprise you when you begin to harvest your own animals that you raise, okay, there's two things. One is the flavor, how easy it is to prepare and cook and to reach that proximate end of being salubrious and ridiculously delicious. Like all you have to do is not burn it and salt it sufficiently, and it'll be good. It'll be probably the best thing you've ever tasted. That's not hyperbole. That is the fruit of 15 years of experience teaching people how to do this. So that's a given, guaranteed flavor beyond what you have ever had, simply because it's fresh and clean in the true sense of being clean. And then the other thing you're going to be surprised by, which is really the only difficulty that people encounter when they start harvesting their own animals. It's not the difficulty of the process, and certainly not its complexity, because it is astoundingly simple. The steps are very few, especially when you see the whole process from living creature in the field to meat on your plate in one day. That is very, very clear. That's an intelligible narrative. The one difficulty people have is going to be estimating how much freezer space you're going to need. Because one of the great evils of the industrial system, and I would even say the small scale slaughterhouse, is the trim bin, where 50% of your hanging weight of any animal is regarded as being inedible, unfit for human culinary use. And so it is turned into cosmetics and dog treats. That is ridiculous. And that's standard operating procedure. Even for small scale harvesters, small scale or custom slaughtermen. That's standard. Whereas when you learn to harvest your own animal, your yield is 100% on hanging weight. Because there's nothing on that creature that is inedible or merely for the trim bin. There's nothing on that creature that your culinary art can't turn into something that is delicious. Even the odd bits, even the weird stuff, the guts. You just have to cook it properly. And it just needs to be fresh. And then it's truly delicious. Okay, there's one exception to that rule. And that is the gallbladder. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but I've eaten brains. I have eaten every part of every livestock species commonly consumed in the Western world. Gizzards, intestines, spleen, kidneys, liver, interior mesentery, caul fat, all of it. What other weird parts? Testicles, we call them culinarily fries. Thyroids, adrenal glands, the glands next to the stomachs. I've eaten stomachs, tripes, literally every part. Blood, of course, heads, eyeballs, all of it, ears, trotters, which are the feet of pigs, I think it's funny that we call pig's feet trotters in English, and the cloven hoof of bovines and sheeps and goats hooves. It's not funny, it's poetic, because a pig clearly trots on high heels, whereas a hoof is an entirely different thing. Literally, pigs walk around on high heels. The little knob at the back of their legs that you see sticking up, protruding below their hams, that is their heel, and it never touches the ground. So they definitely trot, and if it's a traditional lard breed pig, they even strut, I dare say, side to side, because their footfalls are almost in a straight line. They'd probably be pretty good at plowing if they were a draft animal. They wouldn't mess up your rows. But that's not what I'm talking about. Anyway, it's all delicious, and it is all edible if you know how to braise, pan, fry, and roast. And that is not what you get in the industrial commercial setting. It is disposed of. It is wasted, turned into cosmetics and dog treats, and maybe glue or something. I don't know. It's very, very sad. But you can circumvent that entire wasteful situation by merely harvesting it on your own. So that's what we're going to do with the lamb class, May 30th. And it's ordered. It's ordered, I think that, I would say it's not surprising that the farmer that raises the animal would do the best job harvesting it. You're the most vested. You, in fact, may even have affection for your sheep, which is, if it's not excessive, it's all good. It's a good affection. And that affection is precisely the thing that will motivate you to slaughter it well and decisively, not contrary to its nature, but in fulfillment of it. It's the consummation of your pact, your agreement to steward the sheep between you and the sheep. And so you are going to be the most solicitous to do a good job. It's a lot of fun. All right, I want to try to get some members in here. And if it's not exactly working, to send them the link. Because one of the things that our members can do is participate in the live broadcast of the podcast. And, but, technology being what it is in all of its ponderous convenience, things don't always work perfectly. So I'm going to try to get a direct way for members to participate here, because sending out the link didn't quite work. To the surprise, unfortunately, of no one. But I'm not going to get melancholic and dour about technology during this podcast. Let's not do it, okay? I'm going to see if we can just do it directly through text or something. But if it doesn't work, that's okay. We will iron it out for next time. So I won't sweat it. So we've got the lamb class coming up. And then there's another thing, another event we have. This is the Okie Homesteading Expo. So this is coming up March, which would be this March of this month, in 2 weeks, March 20th and 21st. This is a great expo in Pryor, Oklahoma. So really close to me, which is nice. And lots of speakers are going to be there. It is the, the magisterium of homesteading in America is going to be there. Joel Salatin, Greg Judy sometimes shows up to these. A lot of homesteaders and a lot of seasoned regenerative agriculturalists will be there. I will be there slaughtering a pig. So day one, the 20th, which is a Friday, I'm going to kill a pig. And we'll talk about it. I'll show you all how to do it if you can make it to the expo. Day two, I'm going to cut up and cure the pig. And it'll be great. We'll also have a table there where you can come and hang out, where I will be outside of my harvest, outside of my demonstration. My sons will be there. And so come and hang out and show me pictures of your newly born calves or piglets, because that's a lot of fun. So that'll be happening on March 20th and 21st, the Oki Homesteading Expo. I'm going to have to manage my attendance there around milking, because we have entered the season of milky largesse. Georgie, our cow, I think I mentioned it last week, she calved, and I didn't have to do a thing. It was so great. I checked on her in the morning. I noticed she had a mucus discharge, and then I went to mess, and then I came home, and there was a calf on the ground, and she was licking it vigorously. And it's a little heifer calf, and her name's Maggie, and she's real cute. And she was walking around and stumbling quite a bit after about an hour. And after about 5 hours, she started figuring out very slowly the nursing of the mama. And so what happens when a cow calves is that they give you colostrum and the calf. It's all ordered towards the calf. So in your management, you are imitating the calf. You are her calf. And her udder will be engorged. It will look much fuller than it is because of edema. It's just blood rushing to her udder, preparing to produce milk. And you will milk out this very golden yellow substance that's a little salty and tastes funny, called colostrum. Freeze some of it for the nutritional benefit of any sick creatures on your land, because the colostrum has within it the immunity of the mama cow, and she's immune to the stuff on your farm. And it's really how she arms her calf as far as the immune system goes. And it's just so packed with nutrients. It's incredible. It tastes a little weird. Not bad, but odd. And then that will taper off, after about, 7 days, it starts to transition to milk. And the milk will kind of start quite cowy. It will have the essence of bovine. It will taste like your cow's burps. And if you've ever milked your cow, and she's a sweetheart and you can get nice and close up to her, she's definitely burped in your face. And that is what her post-colostrum milk will taste like and smell like. It's also not bad, but definitely bovinous, like very non-mild. But then it will continue to taper off and become delicious and mild, and you'll get a lot of milk. So we are getting a lot of milk right now. You milk twice a day because she's just in production mode. And we are getting about 5 gallons a day, 2.5 gallons in the morning, 2.5 gallons in the evening. And I can't tell you how wonderful it is. It's so fitting that our cow's name is Georgie, because in the Greek, that's like, earth worker, right? Geo, earth. And then ergos, like ergonometry. It means farmer. And she really is, she's the preeminent animal farmer on the land, because she converts that which is profoundly useless, nutrients locked in grass, but also ubiquitous and everywhere, into the most readily available, most nutritious, digestible, and loved by all She turns it all into milk. It's incredible. The most prolific and useless thing on the farm, she translates into the most useful and prolific abundance and harvest of the farm, milk. And so she is at the point now where she's feeding all us humans, the pigs, the cat, and whoever else can get in there, and her calf. It's incredible. She can do it all. So we milk twice a day, and now it's all about economy. In our household, we are just trying to keep up with the abundance of milk. And it's not hard, because worst case scenario, worst case, you pour some to the pigs. And it is incredible what it does for pigs. The piggery and the dairy they're a unit. They're an irreducible unit of the farm. If you should get a cow, you should definitely get a cow. So erase the if part. You should. You should get a dairy cow, and I even think it should be your first animal on your homestead, because it is this. It's the simplest and in many ways the easiest to raise, even though they're big. But you should get a cow, and that should imply necessarily and indubitably getting pigs, because they will benefit as much as you from her milk. It's so good for them, and this has a long history. This is how you do on the family farm. It's even been, on the scale of larger production. When you look at the Parmesan region, Parmigiano, Romano Parmigiano, I don't know actually how to say it, but that is in the north of Italy. If you've ever heard of Parmesan cheese, that's where it comes from. And they milk these beautiful cows on their alpine pastures, almost alpine. And they make Parmesan cheese, which is a very finely cut curd and a very long aged cheese. Produces, because of the fine cutting, you get all the whey out of there. Produces a lot of whey. Well, what are you going to do with that whey? You're going to feed that to pigs. And they've been doing this for only centuries. And it produces the Parma ham. So they've been joining the piggery to the creamery forever. And sometimes you'll even find people in the, new agrarian context per day, saying that you should not feed dairy to pigs, that you intend to cure because it will make their fat oxidize too quickly. And that's kind of true, but not enough. It doesn't matter enough. And I would say that oxidation, which is where the cured fat of the meat that's hanging in your kitchen, not frozen, preserved and hanging in your kitchen, it becomes a little bitter. It turns a little yellow through oxidation, and it can be a little bitter in flavor. Now, the other thing that oxidation is, the other thing that it becomes, it's nutty. It gives it a cheesy, delicious flavor that is really good. It's a two-part flavor, okay? It's at the beginning, it is just that ineffably delicious, characteristic Parmesan cheese flavor of a 2-year aged ham. Unequivocally, that comes from the oxidation of the fat or the rancidity. But then, as you chew on it, it might, towards the end of your mastication experience, become a little bitter. But it's not a bad bitterness. And I think the best way to counter that, actually, is not by not feeding your cows milk. That is just too efficient. You can't not do that if you have a dairy cow and pigs. You are obligated by the transcendent efficiency that you gain and the radiant health of your pigs and the most propitious use of excess milk and whey. Basically obligated to do it. So do it. But if you want to mitigate the bitterness of the fact you just need to raise your pigs in the forest or on wood chips in deep bedding. So you can even do this in a benevolent confinement context. The homestead piggery should be in proximity to your pasture or your milking parlor, where it's easy to take excess milk, or your creamery, and not have to walk a long distance to feed it to the pigs. And the pigs should be either in a forest or on a deep bedding of wood chips, or mulch, as they say. And this is for a number of reasons, not the least of which is your pigs will kind of wreck your pasture. So when you're planning out your homestead, don't plan to put pigs on your grass. Put your cows, your sheep, and your goats on grass, because they, like we were talking about at the beginning, they have the potency, the potential to actually increase the yield of grass on your fields, to enhance its fertility by extracting their nourishment from it. You just have to turn that potency into act by your benevolent management. That's what ruminants do. Pigs, on the other hand, they are going to go subterranean. They're going to excavate beneath the grass. They'll nibble the grass a little bit. People always correct me when I go on my rant about don't pasture your pigs. And they say, my pigs eat grass. It's like, I know. All pigs will eat grass. But they also, in addition to grass eatery, will go under the turf and eat the roots of the grass or the grubs and whatever else they fancy beneath the turf, beneath the grass. And when they do that, it's rough. It's rough on the pasture. It'll make it, it'll give it pits. It'll make it unlevel. And if they're left on long enough, for a long enough time, they will just turn it into a moonscape. And honestly, ruminants will do that too, if they're not moved, like we said at the beginning, to improve the dust of your earth. The soil will become dust, and it will blow away, as it has done historically in my state. Pigs will do that far quicker to pasture than ruminants will. They'll just turn it into a pitted dust bowl, a moonscape, devoid of all fertility. And again, that bare earth, that's what turns soil to dust and wrecks fertility. So unless you can do a very scientific and prompt pig raising management system where you put them out on grass and then move them precisely when you need to before they do any destruction, but just nibble on the succulent grass, and you move them before they excavate, which basically means you'll have to be watching your pigs nonstop, and you don't have time for it. Put them in the woods or in benevolent confinement on a bedding of wood chips. That's where they will actually serve the forest, and even there, serve the ground that they're on. Even there, the ground needs a rest. It always needs a rest. And so I give my forested land a year break before I put pigs back on that spot. And that allows the understory to recover and hold on to some of the topsoil that may have been removed, along with some fertility, by the action of the pigs and the rain and the movement of water. So even there, they need to be managed. But the beauty of this, of both wood chips and forests, is that they have woody things, and pigs eat woody things. The forest, it's a seasonal thing anyway, so you're more inclined to give it a rest. And that season is from Michaelmas to Martinmas, middle of September, middle of November. That's when the acorns are falling. That's when any tree mass, the hickories and the pecans and the acorns in Oklahoma are falling. And the pigs will just hoover them up with passion, and all of them. It's incredible. And it will notably offset how much feed they're eating. And the other thing it will do is confer an antioxidant to their diet. We're getting back to the bitter fat problem here. It's really it's an amazing effect, because what that rancid fat flavor is in your hanging prosciutto, if it's a little too bitter for you, it is the oxidation. It's rancidity, which doesn't mean putrefaction. It just means oxidation. It's the oxidizing of the fats. If your pigs are consuming tannins by eating acorns, and let me tell you, you know, if you've ever tried to eat acorns, that tannins are unpalatable. Acorns are unpalatable. Yes, people in dire circumstances have consumed acorns, but oh my goodness, the bitterness of the tannins is unreal. Not a thing that bothers pigs at all. They're totally cool with it. And so when they eat those acorns by the bucket load, they're getting lots of tannins, and tannins are an antioxidant. And so it makes their fat, even after hanging for 2 years in your kitchen in the form of a cured ham, it makes that fat less prone to oxidation, and which means it keeps it sweeter because of the antioxidants. And I have found that you get the same effect, not to the same degree, but to a lesser degree, but nonetheless, it's true, when you raise pigs on wood mulch. The wood mulch is the earth under their feet. And this is what you would do in a confined area. Put them on like 12 inches of mulch in, a 16 by 20 or 16 by 16 situation of benevolent confinement. And they will not only enjoy that mulch for its ability to keep them out of mud and out of their own waste, that mulch will also help to decompose their waste into salutary compost and prevent it from stinking and putrefying in an anaerobic, disgusting way. But they will also nibble that wood. They will absolutely, if you can get green mulch, so you kind of pick it up fresh, not after it's been sitting in a pile for 6 months. They will 100% eat twigs. They will nibble on any of the cambium, the living layer of the wood that they can find. They're very dexterous with their snouts, their teeth, and their tongue. And that will have an effect. So wood chips it's a great way to raise your pigs. And you can also position them conveniently close to your creamery where you're milking your cow. So it's easy to feed them whey or skim milk, or honestly, just that one milking that you don't have time to bottle. Just give it to the pigs. It will not be wasted. And so in our management with our beautiful Georgie cow, where we're getting 5 gallons a day, we're drinking a lot of milk, a lot. But we are also putting up a lot of kefir, which is a way to preserve milk. If you can get kefir grains, you can get them from me, because we grow them like crazy. They multiply, and you have to give them away sometime. You basically add the warm milk strained right from the cow. I put it in a 5-gallon Cambro, a food grade bucket, and then you stir in the kefir grains, and then you put it in your pantry, not your fridge. And if you can use that fresh, warm milk, unrefrigerated, simply strained, you keep it there for 3 or 4 or 5 days, depending on the temperature outside, and you learn to judge it, and it's super forgiving. It'll just get more and more sour the longer it hangs out. And then you strain it to remove the kefir grains, bottle it, refrigerate it, and then you really slow down the fermentation. It's a fermentation of the milk, and it makes a drinkable yogurt substance that is delicious. And my favorite is when it's a little sour. And you know what's really good with kefir? It's become a mainstay of our family. It is an elemental meal, like 100%. It's a meal. It uses 100% of the milk. So it's the whole milk, not skim, not just the fat, right? It's the whole deal. So good. All mammals love it because we're all made to start life on dairy. And the kefir, I like to have it with a little bit of lemon juice. It sounds weird, but it is so good. Oh, it's such a good sourness to it. And so I'll actually squeeze a few drops of lemon juice on the top of my glass of kefir. Love it. Refreshing, delicious, and a sincere meal. The other thing we do when we're trying to use up and catch up with the abundance of the family milk cow is we deploy stale bread. Stale bread is a food group. I don't know if you know about this. You know about this if you make lots of homemade sourdough bread, right? With a starter, not with yeast. You know that that bread neither spoils or rots, right? It doesn't. It will do two things as it hangs around. If it's not kept in a bread cupboard, it will go stale, which just means it gets super hard. If you put it in a bread cabinet, it will grow mold. It will grow cheese mold, blue cheese mold, that you can actually use to inoculate your blue cheese. That's a thing. But the mold is innocuous in addition to being an inoculant, and meaning it's harmless. It's good. There's no problem with that mold. And it will, if you rub it and smell it, you'll recognize the smell as a salubrious mold, as opposed to a harmful, a noxious mold. And we use stale bread all the time because we packed our bread cabinet because we're moving, so we haven't been using it. So it's stale bread right now. And you can read one of my favorite meals for my son, Vincent, who is going to be 2 in April. Babies. You know what babies need to eat? Milk and bread. And if your bread is good, if it's whole wheat, ideally freshly ground, and if your milk is raw from your home milk cow, guess what? You have like a complete full nutrients there. It's amazing. It's so good for you. And so what Vinny gets, my son, we call him Vincent or Vinny or Chente sometimes, is he gets stale breadcrumbs, because the loaves, we'll make 8 loaves at a time. And by the time we get to the last one, which is like literally day 2 or 3, it is starting to get a little hard, especially the crust. It's getting a little stale and hard. Not going bad. It's still wonderful stuff. But if you just cut it up into little dice, put it in a bowl, and then pour milk over it, done. You can even drizzle honey on it if you want. I guess it's a kind of cereal, but that's like a Vinny meal, and that is good to go. That is a full and complete meal, super simple and delicious, actually. And it's because the ingredients are few and true. They're not artificial or overly processed, and so you can eat it unreprovedly. You don't have to feel guilty for its simplicity or for the staleness of your bread. The staleness is on purpose, and it's all good. That's one of the efficiencies that you get when you milk your own cow and bake your own bread. I've got a whole list, I mean, of the use of stale bread in our kitchen. I think William Cobbett actually mentions that when he was a boy, in his book called The Cottage Economy, which I highly recommend, that he ate nothing but milk bread as a child. And he grew up strong and strapping. And what he actually is referring to is adding milk to your dough. And so instead of water to your sourdough starter, he would add skim milk. And that makes an incredibly rich, incredibly dense, very delicious loaf of bread. It's actually really good. You would just probably want to make smaller loaves because the milk will tend to burn at super high temperatures, and the larger loaves take a long time at super high temperatures. So if you do it, make out slightly smaller loaves. But anyway, incredible efficiency. That is one of the great efficiencies that we have with our sweet Georgia cow. And the other thing, when you go to get your cow, and I know I mentioned this ad nauseum, is you need to get a sweet cow. I've already listed all the benefits of this, but another one that I take for granted every day because I don't have this struggle is that any human can milk my cow. Some cows are picky. They get used to a certain milker. They even get touchy and antsy when other people even walk by while she's being milked. Some cows will only suffer being milked by a machine. Georgie, we are not limited to having one milker. I can't tell you how efficient that is, how inefficient it is also to have a cow that will only let one person milk them and otherwise fight and kick and pull when anyone else gets involved in the milking. But in my house, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 milkers. Wait, I don't even know if I counted myself there. Me, Wallace, Johnny, Simon, Mary. Beatrice is learning. Yeah, 5.5. And we can all milk. And we milk in teams. We milk on both sides, one on each side. And we can milk her out pretty quick that way. We milk by hand. But with 5.5 milkers, milking is a very, very doable family chore. There's not one person that is locked into that 12-hour schedule of having to be there every morning and every evening, no matter what, because they're the only one that can milk the cow. So that is an immense, incalculable, ineffable benefit of having a sweet cow, is that anyone can milk her, and she is totally cool with it. It's really great. And it is a good domestic chore for the kids. And as a chore, I would say, the milking is a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity to teach your children virtue because it must be done well. She's too precious. Like, we're not going to give her mastitis by not milking her out completely. The dishes have to be cleaned. It's not hard, but it has to be thorough. There is a degree of competency that is necessary each time. And in the milking parlor, it is the school of virtue. Your hands are going to hurt, especially when you learn. And you can't stop. You can't cut off and not milk her out. You probably could if you have a calf and you're calf sharing. But I would say even right after she calves, soon after, she still needs to be milked out because she is still producing too much milk for that calf. Even if you milk half of it and leave half in the other, she will be too engorged and she'll start getting mastitis. She could have other problems. Even with a calf nursing on her, you want to milk her out all the way twice a day. And so it is essential. It is a hard obligation that cannot be circumvented as a result of pain, distaste, and sore palms or throbbing forearms. You get arm pump. That's how I experienced it. And it was really only for the first 2 days, and then I'm good. If you ride a motorcycle, you know what arm pump is. If you ride a motorcycle, you should be milking a cow. I would say a dirt bike, because you're there. Like, you have the arm strength, the forearm strength. You got it. You will have no soreness when you start to milk your cow. So put the dirt bikes in the garage and get a milk cow, and you'll be good to go. I have a good question from my friend Travis, who is a Meatsmith member, who is endeavoring to do the family farm thing and even has experience making a living off of farming as a family, which is an extraordinary achievement. Totally unique and hyper uncommon. He says, my wife and I were curious how sharing the homesteading work with kids goes for them. Did you see that segue? It's a good question. So they have had, there's sometimes there's issues with the eldest child, who's 7.5 years old, who's really the only one big enough to contribute meaningfully to farm chores. Totally true. It's so funny, people will tell you, especially when you brazenly have lots of kids, they're frequently the first remark that you get is, oh, well, you have lots of help on the farm, which is precisely false. That's not it. No, actually, the number one hindrance to farming is a multiplicity of young children. Their demands are so intractable and constant that farming is nigh impossible with lots of young children. So no, not help. They get it. They got to get older. Then you do have farm help, but then you're dealing with a free agent. You see, you're dealing with a child who has a will that belongs to them, and so they might not want to do farm duties. And this is a real thing. So they have a 7.5-year-old who's able to meaningfully contribute. The others are under 3. So they are farm hindrances, but they are the final cause of the farm. They're the reason that the farm exists, to feed their cute little bellies. But they are the greatest hindrance to that final cause at the same time. So they are the greatest thwart to the efficient cause of their own final cause of the farm. So we love to consider a milk cow, but need to offset some farm work with child help to make it happen, and we're struggling with that. Yeah, it is hard. So I'm going to tell you what I do as a father of 9, technically 10. We're going to have our 10th child born in about 2 weeks. Doing chores is how you serve the household. And so they are not optional. And it doesn't mean you have to be a tyrant, obviously, but it does mean for modern people that we have to wean ourselves of the idea that farming is inherently delightful. And I'm not saying, I know that my friend doesn't necessarily think this, but this is a struggle that I had to overcome. Who wouldn't want to milk a cow? Like, I am positively excited about it. I love it. I love every time I get to do it. I love the chore. Now, that's a little weird. That's because I'm an orphan. And I was, in the sense of orphaned from any tradition. I have wonderful parents. But orphaned from any tradition of agriculture, totally estranged from it. So whenever I encounter the real, the true, the good, and the beautiful in milking a cow, I think, oh, this is great. How could you ever not want to do this? I love it. The milk is so delicious. I get the equation. Let's do this. My children, that's all they've known. They are not orphans from tradition. They have grown up on the farm. And so within the tight circumference of just a single generation, I see how the allurements of the town managed to extract and totally vacate the country, the rural landscape. That doesn't take, 60 years. That takes one generation. Because the town is designed to entice them by its immediate, instant, concupiscible gratifications. It's shiny and it's artificially flavored. And they're not born with the virtue to resist that. That virtue must be taught, must be learned. And they need both the reason, the intellectual reasoning for it when they reach the age of reason, right? But up until then, they really just need the structure, the order, and the discipline of chores. Then you can start reasoning with them. And then as they get older, you can start counseling them, right? As they get more independent and mature and virtuous. But really, all of these daily chores, like doing the dishes, these are not things that they are born wanting to do with enthusiasm. Seeing the end and the delight in these elemental chores, like feeding the pigs, putting the chickens in, collecting the eggs. My kids have only ever known that context, and I have to tell them to do it. It is an imposition of a family law. This is This is what we do. And it's not arbitrary. Unfortunately, in our modern context, it seems optional. Well, we could just buy a neighborhood house and buy all of our food at the store and not have to do any of these chores. And unfortunately, that is a defect of our modern age. Whereas before, it was necessity. You had to farm for subsistence. You didn't have the option to go buy Twinkies. That was not a thing. And so we actually have to have extraordinary virtue and imbue it to our children to resist this novel temptation that no generations ever in the history of the universe have ever had to deal with. Unequivocally, it's not even close. These are totally novel. Twinkies are novel. They did not exist. The unbelievable pathological blast of dopamine from a Snickers bar has never occurred to any human before 60 years ago, whenever those were invented. I don't know when that was. That is a new temptation. That is a new thing. And so we have to really even hunker down with extraordinary effort to give virtue to our children, the virtues of temperance and self-discipline and of doing your duty to the household and to your, you're a direct beneficiary of them. And so of having shelter, clothing, and good food. And so you participate in the production of the household. And so you kind of have to, I have had to shamelessly and without hesitation or self-questioning. These are chores. And these are the laws of the household. They must be done for your own good. And then once that law is set, these need to be done, then you can show them the delight. Then you can show them how to do the chores well. And they might not really even grasp onto the delight as readily as you or me as an orphan, again, estranged from the delights of the simple life for my entire childhood, being raised in just utter convenience, which is such a weird depravity, the depravity of unlimited convenience. That's how a lot of us were raised. And so just milking a cow has its own sheen, its own desirability and delight in it. Like a homecoming. And that's unique, I think, to our particular generation. Whereas our children raised in that context, they need to be given the gift of structure and duty. And you put burdens on them to make them strong and responsibility. And they can go along with it with their will. They can willfully do it and take delight in being in charge of the chickens. Like, these are your birds. You keep them alive. You put them in. Here's how you do it. I'll buy the feed. Collect the eggs and manage them well. Take responsibility for them. And you can put that on them and teach them and guide them in fulfilling that duty well. And then those are just chores, and they must be done. And one thing I'm learning is that you also have to sustain them with ordered and proper delight. They should enjoy the fruits of their labor. They need to enjoy them. You need to make pudding with eggs, right? You need to make ice cream. Oh my goodness. Make ice cream. Eat lots of ice cream from your home milked cream, right? You gotta make ice cream if you get a family cow, because it is the delight and the fruits of your labor that makes the labor easier. And it's especially important for children to experience that delight. It is sustaining. It sustains them. And that honestly is the hardest part for me, because I'm weird. I actually delight in the chore itself. because I don't know, I'm a weirdo. The play, the delicious ice cream afterward is a secondary thought to me, just as my own personal orientation goes. And so I have to, it takes an extraordinary effort for me to remember to ensure that the children delight in their work, in the fruit of their labor, in the fruit of their chores, and have an experience that supervening good, that good that accompanies a good act, which is pleasure. It's not the point of the act, but it should accompany it to make the act easier, and virtue then becomes easier. Um, and so just ensuring that they're sustained by delight while also not compromising with this is the law of the household. And I know law sounds like a strong word, but it is kind of strong. We need to do this. This is how we get our food. And, especially when they get older, it really becomes important to convey to them a lot of the reasons too. My children have really latched on to you got to appeal to the reason, because the reasoning is awakening, and they need that. They need to have those philosophical, rational, moral conversations about why we produce our food this way and we don't just go buy Twinkies all day. Like all the way down to the details. Carcinogens, the synthetic ingredients, the GMOs, the effect on your health, and what that does to you, and how it can even deprive you. If your health gets to such a degree, it can deprive you of your main task in life, because it will so sap your power, sap your energy, even sap your intellectual ability, that you won't be able to do the thing that you need to do, that you're called to do in your life. And so it's really important to, I think, convey those reasons to them, bring them into the conversations that made you at the beginning want to get out of the tainted food supply and get into the real supply of food from the homestead, supply of real food that is good for you and actually enhances your powers. And it's important for them to know those reasons in a didactic way, so you can teach them that clearly and with detail. They'll latch onto it. It is what distinguishes your family, is that you eat well, and as a consequence, you're healthy. You're healthy, and you have energy, and you can do your duties well and with delight, because of that. But shamelessly make chore lists, check them off, and if you don't do your chore, then it is proper to be deprived of the fruits that would result from that chore. So from various delights, things that are extraneous, fun things for the household. That's the delight of being in our family and part of our household order. If you don't do the chores, if you don't do the work, then you lose those delights. And that's the discipline that we have brought to bear to keep them encouraged, because there is a real link. It's not an artificial link between the doing of the chores and the delight of family life. Like we do really need to milk the cow. Otherwise, we will have a very terrible experience of her getting amazingly, horribly ill and sick and engorged. And then we don't get milk. And then we have a very sick animal, and we're probably going to lose her. Like, it's all the delight goes. So it's a very clear if-then equation that is not arbitrary, but it is based in reality. And allowing your children to experience the consequence of not doing what they should is one of the greatest gifts and most formative things that you can give them, because you are unequivocally forming them. I mean, that's your job. The duty of the household, of the parents, is to procreate and educate your kids, to form them, and to give them the gift of the good life, of the happy life, which is to live virtuously, to develop good habits and experience the fruit of those good habits. Um, and that's what we got to do for our kids. And I think that a good mechanism for that are the farm chores, definitely, and then experiencing the delight of the fruits of their labors and the consequences if we don't do the chores. And you might have to fabricate some of the consequences because you're going to go out there and milk the cow if they didn't, right? You're not going to let the cow die. But you can do that. You can create the consequences, depriving them of certain family goods, family delights. When you extract yourself from the family order by not doing your chore, by not supporting the home, supporting the family, then you miss out, and that's a bummer. That is also a natural consequence, even though you might be fabricating it, and creating it for that particular moment. Anyway, that's what we have done, very imperfectly. But my kids they're good kids, and they heroically tolerate our failures in that regard. Um, and we get milk every day, and it's pretty wonderful. And they love the milk. So especially when they become teenagers, my sons just drain so much milk. I can't even tell you. They're just draining it. So and they're smart. They're smart kids. Thanks be to God, they passed the stage where they were irrational. They now have full use of their reason, and so they get it. They get it. Even if they are disinclined to the farming chore and they don't like, poo on their boots. That only matters when they don't put their boots on, by the way. But then, even then, they get the equation. Like, all right, let's go milk the cow. It's got to happen. And they're very obedient and good about that. And they love the results. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for this uniquely long podcast. Thanks for hanging out the whole time. I did not talk at all about anything that I planned to talk about. But that's just the way it happens sometimes. I hope it was delightful for you. It's always a pleasure for me. Do check out farmsteadmeatsmith.com and look at the land class May 30th this year. And I'm actually, if I can schedule some more, I have to acquire more cows, and I think I know how. But we sold the beef in a day class in like 24 hours, and so I would like to supply another one for those of you who missed out on that, because you did not have a chance to sign up at all. It sold right away. And so I'm working on getting that together so I can post another beef in a day class if you'd be interested in that. And I think there is interest. So let me know. And I'm going to try to get that going so we can have another beef in a day class. And then you can check out the Farmstead Meatsmith membership, where we get into the concrete recipes, methods, techniques of husbandry, harvesting, cooking, and sustaining the household in the most graceful manner possible. That's on the Meatsmith membership. That's also the best way you can support us as we endeavor to sell our current home and build a new homestead. Still close by. We're in this transitional period right now. Of course, perfectly timed with the birth of our 10th child, because that's just how things work. But there you have it. Or if you just want to support us and but not necessarily utilize the Meatsmith membership, you can just donate if you feel so inclined. On our homepage, there's a donate button at farmsteadmeatsmith.com. Thank you again for joining me for this episode of the Meatsmith Harvest podcast. I will see you next time.
The hunt is up, the hunt is up, sing merrily we, the hunt is up.